Let me read the opening prayer, and then I'll ask David to read his poem or some other literature. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen. David, would you care to read your
Yes, I
your
would.
poem or prose, whatever you're going to surprise us with today?
Yes, I would like to do that, and it is a poem. And I think after the wonderful Ne'ilah service that we did on Yom Kippur, a lot of us went outside, and if you look to the west, you can see a big bright star.
Mm-hmm.
Star is really the planet Venus. And if you're not sure about that, you may want to ask William Blake, who in 1783 wrote To the Evening Star, thou fair-haired angel of the evening, now whilst the sun rests on the mountains, light thy bright torch of love, thy radiant crown put on, and smile upon our evening bed. Smile on our loves, and while thou drawest the blue curtains of the sky, scatter thy silver dew on every flower that shuts its sweet eyes in timely sleep. Let thy west wind sleep on the lake. Speak silence with thy glimmering eyes, and wash the dusk with silver. Soon, full soon, dost thou withdraw, then the wolf rages wide, and the lion glares through the dun forest. The fleeces of our flocks are covered with thy sacred dew. Protect them with thy influence. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Marty, can I read something that I rediscovered?
Okay, please do.
Okay, I've had this, but I've always been paraphrasing it, but I finally found my original of it. And
Okay.
it's the definition of humble, which we all are seeking always. To be humble is not to stand less than we are, but to stand at our full height next to a standard which is so great as to show how small our greatness is.
Oh, I like that.
I mean, every time I read it, it's just, and since I walk humbly with my God, as no one will know, the last of Micah 6:8.
Very good. Okay. Well, today we're going to basically not be doing any reading per se, but recollecting either a particular passage that that you found in Genesis that was meaningful to you. Okay, so the tables are being.
You don't want me to give the whole Hineni sermon again, do you? No,
well, yes, you can if you want, because I have found that is. It resonated with me. Those of those people that are here that know of some of the things I've written about. Yes, it is something that is also, I think, a very powerful part in Genesis. And what the rabbi had to say is very critical. It gives us an opportunity, recognizing that not only that God is here, but we can also respond with, I am here too. Okay, so it's a very, and I have something that I wrote that dovetails into that. But before we do that, I think that it would be interesting to just go and each one of you speak about a particular patriarch or a particular matriarch that or some event that was, you felt that was most powerful for you. Go ahead. You've got the floor.
I know this one always. Genesis
you do it.
Genesis 2:2, if anybody wants to read it. On the seventh day, God finished the work that he had been doing. It didn't say he finished the job. So to me, that is so important to remember that God didn't finish it. He left the rest of it up to us.
I love it.
So that's,
Okay, you want to
that-
expand on that?
well,
Would you like to expand on that?
but I mean, it's just keeping that in mind that, the job's not done. It's not over. It's not over till it's over, till the fat lady sings, the fat lady hasn't sung yet. So but that to me is almost the crux of the whole, I summarize things into little teeny snippets, but I know that
Okay.
behind that snippet is this great big story. And this snippet is he finished the work he had been doing and it's not completed. So, I mean, that's all. I mean, what more can I say to that? Just, it's up to us. That's our job.
Okay.
We must start. We're not obligated. I can't remember the exact quote, but I'm sure Norm will. We're not obligated to finish the task, but we cannot restrain from starting it. You know which one I'm talking about. Somebody does. Because
Very good. So what I'm going to do before we go on to another topic, I would like to ask everyone else not to change the subject, but what Ricky brought to our attention, what does that mean to us? Okay.
Can I just
yes.
do a little
Sure.
analytic playing around, taking Ricky's message and taking your message? And usually I change around a letter in Hebrew, but I'm going to change around a letter in English.
okay.
Marty, you said there are those of us who need to answer, I am here too. Don't make the two the TOO, make the two TO ...
Right.
and
Right.
then finish with Ricky's
Right.
Yeah.
to help God in completing the task in
Right.
Genesis.
I-
Having said
Correct,
that,
correct.
I do have to point out that the entire message, Ricky, is based on the English translation and not on the Hebrew.
Oh, don't tell me the Hebrew doesn't say that. Because I have read more. In fact, I was visiting a Christian friend recently. We pulled out her Bible. Even though the commentary said God was finished, the actual translation was similar, that God
I mean,
completed just.
it could be that that's the way that biblical scholarship as well as biblical interpretation has been leading, but the Hebrew is definitely in the past tense.
So you're
Ah.
saying
That was done.
It was finished.
No, the not fit. Well, the finish is the beginning of the phrase. Okay.
Okay.
God finished the work
God finished
that
in the
he had
seventh
done.
day. All the work. Now you might be able to make a case that was to be done, that
Exactly.
was to be done by him, as opposed to that was to be done by,
Well,
in the whole
he finished all
process.
the work that he had done doesn't mean he finished the whole job.
No.
So even putting it in the past tense.
Right, just finished whatever task he had
Yeah,
chosen,
exactly.
God had chosen to do
Exactly.
through the process of creation. Right.
Okay. Yes, Don.
A couple of things, if I may. First, I'd like to add my thanks to Rabbi Norm for service, and I thought it was devout and it was warm. It was
Thank you, Dan.
two hard things to combine. And also, very few people would get away with the parrot joke in the middle of Yom Kippur. For all of you who heard the parrot joke. Next thing was a question about the Hebrew translation as well. And that's in the very beginning of Genesis, where God warns Adam that if he eats from the tree, that he will surely die in that day. And of course, he didn't die in that day. And I'm suspecting that we don't have an English translation, or the tense is wrong, the verb tense is wrong. But in the straight translation, it's a promise that wasn't kept. So I wonder if Rabbi could comment.
So
on-
you're talking about chapter 2, like verse 17, right?
Yeah. It's troubled me for I don't know how long.
Well, while the rabbi is looking up the
Yeah,
Hebrew,
the,
go ahead. Yes, okay.
The classical is not that it will be a physical death,
Right.
but that you as a human being will now understand mortality.
Mhm.
Okay, that you'll understand that there is such a thing as death. There is such a thing as an end. What my philosophy professor would call finitude.
So is that an
As opposed to directly, if you take one bite, you've been poisoned and you're gonna die.
okay? So
That's the classical interpretation.
but the actual translation is
The actual translation is you shall surely die.
so that I get okay. So that's been midrash for. a
Well,
long-
it's commentary. It's trying to understand. Like they raised the same question that you're raising. Was God saying, okay, and then they did eat of that fruit, and then but they didn't die. So how do you reconcile that? And they would say that they would interpret the words mot tamut, I think is the Hebrew, mot tamut, as that you will understand, or you will know that there is such a thing as death.
Okay.
The previous to that act of eating, Adam, well, Eve isn't around yet, but that Adam had every right to believe that he was immortal.
Oh,
That's the way that they see it.
thank you. David has had his hand up for a while now.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Marty. The thing that this actually builds on what we heard before from Ricky. And the thing that really got to me more than almost anything else in Genesis were the first two words of the third portion, Lech Lecha. And
Okay.
we're talking about the beginning of a journey, not just a physical journey. We can feel that way and interpret that way as we start walking toward the promised land or at any other place we're going to, but also a spiritual one as we are starting to do something, whether it is to study English literature, to look up at the stars, to search for comets. These are all journeys that we have to consider, plan for, but most of all begin.
Very good. It's another beginning. One of the things that when I just wanted to go back to what the rabbi was saying, also there are a lot of what I would call metaphors in the Genesis story, and it doesn't mean, and I've never interpreted it as a physical death, but what dies is your sense of being cared for, mortality. That I hate to use the word, the ideal Eden of existence, that now you're left up to yourself to do for yourself and do for your family or do for others. All that now you've eaten of that fruit of knowledge that you have to take. You have to rely on yourself. You can't expect God to be there 100% of the time. Even though I know over my shoulder he's there, but it's really his teachings that are there. And you have to have that responsibility to try to follow the path that has been outlined by God. Yes, Helene.
No, I think it was, somebody was ahead of me.
Oh, was it Michael?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, Michael.
No, that's okay. Helene, you want to go? Go ahead there. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm sitting here thinking how different I am and what part of Genesis makes the most sense to me. But you see, death for me is a new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Death for me is God is with me because of where I was raised. Every minute, I am in total touch with God's word, because if not, I would die right now. I need God to guide me to physical death. And when I die, I believe in reincarnation. So it's a brand new life. So I'm not upset. So when I die, and I will be, I know that that the souls that have loved God the way I do are waiting for me.
Very good. Very good.
That's what I believe.
So I appreciate that. Now, David raised another question, another topic. David, would you like to repeat that about
Yeah,
Lech Lecha?
only that the idea of beginning a journey, whether it is a physical journey, a short or a long one, or particularly a spiritual journey, to do a project, to set your life's goals, or to change your life's goals. And the reflection back to the third portion of Genesis, to me, is very powerful and very personal.
Any comments about what?
Marty, don't forget to get back to Michael, because.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay. Michael, yes, go ahead.
Rabbi, thank you very much. I actually need an advocate here once in a while. But I just wanted to mention that that I've said this before, that the saying that is not in the Bible or the Torah, it may be in there indirectly, but that saying, God helps those who help themselves, I think would to come from Genesis, would really stem from the what you get out of Genesis. If someone is just sitting idly by, and who has the wherewithal to at least try to do things for themselves, and if you believe in God, as I do, I believe that God will intervene. But if you don't try, you just put everything. And I have friends who said, "Well, I'm going to put everything in God's hands," and I don't, and I see their frustration and their problems, but it just doesn't. If, like I say, if you have the ability to do something, if you're not disabled in any way, but just say that I'm going to put everything in God's hands, and I've heard that so many times, a number of times. So it's just, I don't believe in that personally. And so this position that I take, God helps those who help themselves, there's a lot of validity to that statement from me.
Very good. Very nice. when David mentioned that that Lech Lecha meant a lot for him, there's an obvious parallel with new beginnings. Okay, basically, when God is saying, "Go, I have something in store for you," is God also saying, "Come, I have something in store for you"?
Sure.
What's the difference between going and coming?
There may not be any difference actually, because they're both part of the journey that God is commanding us to take.
The realm of God.
That's right. When if you say come, it sort of means that everything is predestined. If he says go, you have many ways. Yes, Grace says it, leaving and arriving. So one means you still have to find your way, and gives you hope that you can find your way, that you're not going to keep doing it the same old way.
Right.
Yes, Rabbi
Also, now
Norman.
linking into what Michael was saying is that there's a sense of going is lech lecha, go
Yes.
by yourself, go to yourself, but come is to accompany, is, come with me, come along, whether it's with another person, whether it's all of the, in a good sense, all the baggage
Right.
that we bring with us. And so the go in my mind signifies going as an individual, but come is a much larger entity, if you will.
Okay. Very good. Yes, Don.
Difference between going and coming to me is a lot of that is when the Israelites left Egypt, they were going, and then but shortly a pillar of fire and smoke appeared, and then that was come with me. The going was the initial blind belief. But coming back to Genesis, I don't know how much, so much has changed. In Genesis, so much of that was about sacrifice. And the central part of Genesis to me is the Akida. I always keep coming back to that. It's
Okay.
very understandable, except in total devotion. And last session, the question was asked, did God get angry about the Holocaust? And the question was met with complete silence. And I thought about the Akida. I also thought about God speaking to Job through the whirlwind. You cannot know me. Don't even try. But anyway, Genesis to me is so different. It's so, so much has changed. So I keep coming back to the Akida. It's the central part.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Chris.
I
And then
am
David.
thinking of what it was brought up, the go and the coming. To me, they both require obedience and trust or faith. It doesn't matter where, but if God says come, to me it's a greater invitation to come because he is leading. And when he says go, he's leaving the door open as to where the go is going, but you still require that obedience, like Abraham going to slaughter his son. That's a total obedience and trust that God is going to provide. So I like both terms, go or coming.
Okay.
I think there's a heaviness on coming because that means he's leaving for me.
Thank you. David, your hand was up and then the rabbi.
Actually, it was me.
Oh, it was Wendy. Okay.
I wanted to give a secondary interpretation of what Michael said about putting yourself in God's hands. The way I understand that, it sort of goes with the phrase, let go, let God, which means you have so much going on in your life, and you can't get a grip on it, you cannot get it together, and you have tried every single route you can, and you still can't get there. So finally, instead of trying to take control of everything, you just look up and say, Lord, I'm in your hands, please show me the way. And whenever I have done something like that, somehow the way always gets shown to me, and it is never, ever what I think it should be.
Right.
Totally different.
Good point.
Ricky,
Yeah.
It's a very good point. Wasn't there a song where there was a line, "Show me the way"? A popular
Show me the
song.
way to go home.
Yeah,
I'm tired.
I'm tired and I want to go to bed.
right.
It'll take about an hour.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm starting to hear, especially from Chris's, I'm starting to hear some Kierkegaard in there. You know, the Søren Kierkegaard, a Scandinavian philosopher, is, you know, the leap of faith.
Right.
Okay, that's is the true test.
Okay. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, okay. Well, it was a tie. Don, can I let Gail go ahead of you?
Yeah.
Thank you for being a
The
chauvinist.
battle of the black t-shirts.
I have a wolf.
Aha.
Oh,
I was just saying, going. Okay, if my life is going along and going along. If I hear come, that's a distraction and I have to stop moving and I turn.
Interesting.
That's how I would interpret that.
good way to look at it.
You're on, Don, go.
Excellent.
I just remember from Kierkegaard, he wrote 6 alternative scenes from the Akita. You know, what if Abraham had done this? What if he'd done that? And he could never figure it out either.
True.
So,
Any other? Oh, sorry, Don.
well, that's all I have.
Oh, okay. Any other passages? We've only heard of a few. Yes, Rabbi.
Okay, the one that's always fascinated me, and I've studied it, and if you don't know his work, Rabbi Larry Kushner does a lot with Jacob, with the statement, God is in this place, and I did not know it. Kind of after, you know, after the revelation and the ladder and the angels and whatever. And what Kushner especially picks up on, and that I've always been fascinated by, is the fact that the pronoun I is actually repeated. And since the rabbinic interpretation is that there's nothing extraneous in the Torah, therefore there must be special meaning in why the pronoun I, you know, this must be the house of God, and I, comma, I did not know it. So what's the importance of the extraneous I? And Larry Kushner has a book about that, which maybe we can do a book review study session kind of thing just on that passage and just on that book, because I've always found it fascinating.
Freud would have an interesting comment about
absolutely.
it, because he would say it's first the ego, and then the second is the id.
Yep.
Anyway, any other comments about another passage that struck your fancy over the past 3 years? Yes, Helene.
Well, you've heard this from me over and over, but I don't know where it is. But the Torah talks about bringing your children. When they said, bring your children and your grandchildren. What does that mean in terms of the perpetuation of Judaism? Because other societies have not brought grandchildren and they have died off, but the Jews pass on what we know through the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. And I think that's probably for me and for many an awesome, awesome passage in there.
That's another very good point. Very good. Any comments about what Helene had to say?
Well,
Yes,
it's also
Rabbi.
in the beginning of intro, again, to flip it around, it's the same message, but Judaism not only, or Torah not only addresses parents and telling them what to share with their children and grandchildren, but it speaks to the grandchildren saying, don't forget to remember your parents and your grandparents, by giving us this phrase of, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, and I am your God as well. Okay, so there's a remember your history, remember your ancestors. So it really goes in both directions generationally.
Yeah, good.
Very important. Any other? Grace, you had your hand up.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey,
Yes.
Grace.
Okay, so it's almost the last verse of Genesis, chapter 49. And it's a recollection of similes. So Jacob is explaining, he calls all his sons together and he explains what he sees in each one of them, right? And I mentioned a few weeks ago how it reminded me of Earth, Wind, and Fire, the group, and their works. So I was hoping I could share a document that I put together on screen share and elaborate a little bit about it. Is that okay?
Sure.
Because to me, it's a poem, right? Each paragraph, each verse in 49, it explains, it compares, Joseph is a wild ass, and this one will rest by the weeds, and this one is very prone to go nowhere and will stay by the water. And so it was fascinating to read that, and I've read it a few times, but I'd like to expand on it a little bit with
Sure.
see if I can bring the screen share to cooperate with me. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't really work.
Grace, I wouldn't be surprised if Beth Ann does not have allow screen share on.
It is allowed. It is on. So give me a moment. You guys can talk about something else if you so desire. Shucks it. Let's see, files, and here we go.
Well,
Yeah,
It doesn't. I can't seem to find it. It was
okay.
last week I could find it, and this week, let's see, I can find it elsewhere, but there it is.
Okay, when you do, then we'll do it. You keep working on that.
I will. Thank you.
Any other passages? Michael, is that your thinking hand, or you want to say something?
In the continuation of Judaism over the centuries, I think one of the things that keep Judaism alive, that just keeps it going, is the dynamics of Judaism. For example, you have the different parts of, can't think of the word I'm looking for, but you have Orthodox, then you have conservatism, and then Reformed, and this Reconstruction. That's what I mean by the dynamics of Judaism. The religion remains intact because we pass it on constantly. And it's even, you can even see it in the reading of the Torah. When we come to the end, we don't stop. It just continues. But what changes is these dynamics. What's gonna, now we have this Reconstruction, and sooner or later there's gonna be something else. And I think that's really what keeps the religion alive. It keeps it going because it can't stay the same. The humanness in all of us kind of just wants that. There has to be change. Everything changes. Language changes, and so on and so forth. That's the best that I can think of.
Okay. It's interesting, as you were mentioning the word change, what I've heard today is that the Garden of Eden represents a state of stasis. But life as we know it deals with entropy. It becomes more chaotic as time goes by. Okay. So it is a play. Maybe this was a play on the difference between a state of inertia versus a state of chaos, and it's up to us to make order out of it. Certainly God does.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Ricky.
As Michael was speaking, I was thinking of one book I read on the history of the Jews, and there's a zillion of them, but it was Max Demont's, and I don't know if anybody read it, but I immediately, with that book, came to the conclusion that the Jews keep reinventing themselves to fit into the society, but yet still keep their basic values. And I think that's one of the reasons is that we've been willing to change the Jews during serfdom time would have been very different than the Jews during Roman time, which would be very different, but yet the core stays whole, stays intact. So the reinventing the periphery around who we are, inside is what I caught from what Michael was saying.
Very good. Thank you both for that. Any other comments? To build on what Ricky just said, I once wrote a piece about a bagel. And that without the hole, it would never be a bagel.
That'd be a bialy.
Well, that's the commentary that some people had. I know some people have heard, I don't want to repeat it, but it really is the meat or the bread contained within the bagel is the substance of Judaism, if you think about it, and that God, this is sort of a blend of some of the Kabbalistic concepts of God, Ein Sof being nothing but everything, is the essence, the whole is the true essence of Judaism. And that becomes very, very important. And everything in the bagel gives you a taste, the smell, the texture of Judaism. So I use the bagel as the metaphor for all of that. And it's an interesting concept. Ricky reminded me of that, and that's why I mentioned that. Yes, Michael.
Talking about the bagel in the hole, this would also go true for donuts. So what I want to say is, if uh-oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I just disappeared here. If you're looking for a low-calorie bagel or donut, just look for one that has the largest hole.
There you go.
See?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Grace, it's
Yeah,
not
I
working.
can't. My system is a little.
Can you give us
Updated.
the essence of it? Can
Yes,
you
I thought I would
paraphrase?
just discuss it with it and share it with you. What I found by doing, just a little research on her, I don't know, it just came up in my mind that, they had written their lyricists had written some of the most amazing songs many years ago. And I found one that I thought would be applicable. And it's called Love is Written in Stone. And the words and lyrics speak of that. The final verse is, my love, you will never, ever be alone, because the love is written in stone. Never alone, the love is written in stone. And I think about the tablets, and I think about, the Talmud, and I think about the Torah, and that, originally on, that's how writing began. And it just, I thought it was very parallel. And I like, the descriptive nature of what Jacob is identifying about the sons that he has, and how he loves them, and what he thinks of them. I don't see it as he's condemning them. I don't see it as he's saying, they're not good enough to do anything, but he's just explaining in all honesty, this is what he sees in them. And that was it.
Interesting. Very good. Any comments about that? Yes. Yes, please, Joanne.
I didn't think I was going to say anything because I'm on my second day after my COVID shot, the third one, and it's a doozy. But the stone, love is written in stone. When I first heard you say that, and I've thought this for my whole life, I think of a really rough kind of stone, kind of grayish with some black in it. But I'm realizing after 61 years of marriage that stone sometimes is really beautiful with sparkles, etc. And other times it's almost crying. And that love written in stone is beautiful, but it has changes that happen. In the same way, I think that I hear some of the people in Genesis changing and understanding their love of God. And I hear Abraham putting his son on the altar, and I put my sons there and think, I'm not certain if I could do that. And I guess my stone at that time is a black one, and I don't want anything to do with the altar. But I am surprised as I'm reading Genesis with all of you, how much the people really understand and talk, walk with God. And I have gotten so much out of Genesis, because of that. It's maybe the whole, maybe I've just been looking at the whole, at the donut part and I'm not looking at the whole, maybe, but just that walking that they did. And I wish that we could today somehow or other really start hearing our spiritual self in this world and walk with God. That's all.
Very good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
I'm going to read something from a book, Path of the Prophets, The Ethics-Driven Life by Rabbi Barry Schwartz. And this is just a commentary that he makes, and then a quotation. We want justice served as well as mercy. This dilemma is noted in the masterful medieval commentator Rashi's comment to the very first line of scripture. And his comment is, and it's quoted here, at first God intended to create the world by justice alone. And then God realized that the world could not endure and therefore gave precedence to mercy, allying it with justice. Any comments about that?
Hesed and Gavur.
What?
Hesed and Gavur.
Okay.
It's also Micah 6, the first two parts of Micah 6:8.
Yes. So any other comments? Yes, Gail.
What it brings to mind to me is when Abraham was bargaining with God about Sodom. There's 50 virtuous people.
Yes.
40. So you're asking for justice, you're asking for mercy and bargaining. And we've all probably at some point in our life all done that. Try to make a deal.
That happens. But Nelson Mandela said, and I'm just paraphrasing, that just commenting about what he said, what you sometimes have to forgive. You have to show mercy on rather than hating what has befallen you. You have to show mercy. The people in the Charleston massacre, I'm just reading from the book here. If you do not, one of the survivors said, if you don't forgive, you're letting evil into your heart. You're the one suffering. You're the one hating. You have to forgive for you.
Well, again, the case with Abraham and Sodom is that God is teaching this lesson actually by bargaining with Abraham on the other side. So God is learning how to be merciful, maybe, or teaching us how to be.
Okay. Any other comment? Yes, Ricky.
To pick up on what you just said, I don't know if any of you guys watched The Memory Box, but there was one young girl who was maybe 19 years old. Her mother was pregnant when 9/11 happened. And they're all doing their memories and stuff. And she said, it is better to light the candle than to curse the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that sentence. You know, it's another one I'm going to add to my little repertoire so better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. So that's the forgiveness.
Yeah,
in a
going
nutshell.
back to what Michael said to do.
Yes.
When you do have something and you know how to do it, go ahead and do it instead of sitting in there waiting for God to take care of it. Right, Mike? It's basically, if you do know what to do it. Yeah.
Pray for potatoes, but pick up a hoe.
There you go.
Right. I just wanted to add one other, also by Rabbi Schwartz. He says a remarkable passage in the Talmud asks, what does God pray? And and he goes on to say, the sages would have thought long and hard about the answer, for to imagine the divine mind is no small matter. Now, remember, we tried to do this with all of the patriarchs. Finally, they replied that God prays. May it be my will that my compassion overcomes my anger, and that it may prevail over my justice when my children appeal to me, that I may deal with them in mercy and in love. We heard something similar to that in our prayers on Yom Kippur. Please be merciful in your judgment. But any other comments about that? Rabbi,
well, I mean, what you just quote from Rabbi Schwartz, and it is a very familiar one. The follow-up question becomes, if we say that God hears all prayers, but sometimes the answer is no, does God answer God's own prayers with a no every once in a while?
It's a good point.
I
think of Noah and the flood,
and
God's he corrects himself. Never again will I do this. So it's something that he can muster that the concept of no, I will change. So yes, I think you get a glimpse of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other comments about what the rabbi is pointing out, or both rabbis now pointing out, to what I read plus what Rabbi Norman, any other comments about it?
I stepped away. Does it have to do anything with forgiveness?
Sure.
Let me turn, if I can, to Israel. And I'm not sure about this. Possibly the rabbi could correct me if I'm on the wrong path. But I believe in Israel there is a death penalty, but it's not practiced. It's just simply
only in one charge.
Yes, that's right.
Genocide.
Yes. Yeah, are you talking about
Right.
the Eichmann trial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I would ask, as far as forgiveness, why was Eichmann not forgiven?
Can you repeat that, Mike? Michael, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Okay. So let me just say this. In Israel, as I understand it, there is a death penalty, but it's not practiced. It's more of a mark on that person, that they don't put anybody to death, even though there is a death penalty, as far as I understand, to the best of my knowledge. So now we're going to turn back many years ago, or some years ago, when they brought Eichmann to trial. They gave a trial, they found him guilty, and then I believe he was hung publicly. I believe that's the way
it was not public.
It wasn't?
It was not public. No.
Okay, but he was hung. Yeah.
I believe so, but I know that it was not a public execution.
Okay, I heard differently, but no matter what it was, it's okay. But I just wonder why he was not forgiven, given a mark, and put into prison for the rest of his natural life. But he was hung. He received the death penalty, and I'm asking everyone there, why you think that is?
Yes, Don.
I think it was Hannah Arendt who wrote a whole book on the trial of Eichmann, and it goes back, the entire trial was what was the reason for Eichmann's offense. His horrible, murderous career as a Nazi, and she concluded that he was just an ordinary person who really thought he was following orders and had no moral sense and no sense of wrongdoing, and that in fact his execution was undeserved because he didn't even know what he'd done wrong, or at least at the end of the trial it seemed that way. So I think you're right, Michael. It's a huge question in the history of Israel. Why was he executed?
Well, Michael has said something to us before about the dead. I'm paraphrasing what he said. The dead cannot forgive.
Well,
And how many people died.
well,
And I think that's what Michael is getting after. I
well,
may be wrong.
well, I mean, that's how the death, if I may continue for a moment, that's how, in our country, how the death penalty had come about. Because in all other crimes, no matter how heinous, if the victim is still alive, they can forgive. They can, and that's the only one who can really forgive a crime, is the one who it was perpetrated against. No one else. No one else. And so, yeah, and so that's how that came about. If the person was robbed of his life, and we're talking about premeditation, not anything else, because that's what special circumstances applies. The special circumstances is what's called lie in wait, and then commit the killing, and that rises to the level of what they call murder, and so that's how this whole thing came about. And what Don said was correct, if I may quickly. This is what the Nazis used this as an excuse, is what Don said. I was just following orders. That's all. That's the excuse they all use.
That's good. Ruth Ann, we haven't heard from you.
Okay, I was just going to say, in all laws, the punishment, whether it's just a traffic ticket for speeding or excuse me, being locked in jail, is supposed to be a deterrent. And you don't do this because you don't do that. And I think with Eichmann, I think that it just what he did just rose to be so horrible. I mean, that's not the right word. I had the right word a few minutes ago, but of course I lost it. And that, the death penalty was the only thing. I mean, at this point, it was not a deterrent anymore. It was not a penalty. It was just because of what he had done and against society, and it wouldn't have been necessarily, I mean, it just happened to be our people, but it's the same thing, any of these other genocides in Sudan and wherever. I mean, I think that's what the leaders of these things, if they're going to just wipe out a whole people, there's no deterrent to that type of thing.
Okay. I would like to move on a little bit because there are a lot of other people. I want to try to change the direction here about repentance because I have a whole bunch of other sources here. This is a quotation from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. This brings back repentance is usually we discuss it in Judah's story, this is a commentary that combines the concept of true repentance and forgiveness. Sort of ties into our discussions with the high holidays. Repentance and this is a quotation from Rabbi Sachs, repentance establishes the possibility that we are not condemned endlessly to repeat the past. When I repent, I show I can change. The future is not predestined. I can make it different from what it might have been. Forgiveness liberates us from the past. Forgiveness breaks the irreversibility of reaction and revenge. It is the undoing of what has been done. Humanity changed the day Joseph forgave his brothers. When we forgive and are worthy of being forgiven, we are no longer prisoners of our past.
Beautiful.
It's a different take on this. And any comments about what Rabbi Sachs has said? Yes, Don.
Quick step back to Eichmann. He was, according to Hannah Arendt, he was incapable of repenting because he wasn't pretending that he did.
That's right.
So he was totally amoral, and that's why she thought that he should not have been condemned to death, because he would not see what he had done. He was a bureaucrat through and through. But coming to your question, Marty, forgive assumes that we can overcome the resentment that we carry. You know, most of us go through life being offended by one thing or another, and that leads to feeling resentful. I mean, like most of us, including me, feel resentful about one thing or another, at least once during the day, maybe more. But reaching the point where you reach some critical point where you can detach from that resentment. To me, that's the golden fleece. You know, how do I get there? How do I let it go? How do I, become a member of the human race and at least get a glimmer of God's light? You know, how do I do that? How do I let go? And for me, I have, it's a daily reminder every morning, and it usually lasts maybe right up till breakfast. Then I kind of lose it again. But what you just read, I mean, I think is what we all, at least me, what I have to deal with. I just think that's the essence of. I'm being attacked by this kitten I just rescued last week. He has very sharp teeth and very sharp claws. I forgive you.
As he says it to the cat.
I want to see more of Fletcher, please.
Any other yes, Chris?
Yes, this reminds me of something that I have always taken seriously when I read it every year and every Genesis, is the fact that when God talks to Cain and asks Cain, why are you so upset? Why are you so distraught? And he offers the solution to his problem. He says, if you would change your ways, if you repent, if you stop thinking the way you're thinking, then everything should go well with you. Says that it's like an animal grouching at your door, but you can, and that's the hopeful part of it, you can overcome it. So again, I love that part of a choice kind of a thing. Yes, we're confronted with a lot of stuff, but we ultimate have the solution in our hands, in our hearts, in our brains. When it says you can repent and you can overcome, and that is just the most helpful, hopeful thing that I love about Torah. That it's God is always giving us that opportunity to get out of our little mess and re-encounter ourselves back to Him, and everything will be well. Well, from my trust point of view, my belief point of view. But I just think He just doesn't abandon you in your mess. He offers the opportunity to change and reconcile with Him.
Very good. Any other comments? I'm going to add one more from Rabbi Sachs. And he says humans are destined to conflict so long as contending groups each claim they have a monopoly on truth. The only way they will learn to live at peace is by realizing that they, finite as all humans are, will never in this life achieve truth as it is in heaven. For us, truth is always partial, fragmentary, the view from somewhere, and not, as philosophers sometimes say, the view from nowhere. The deep insight, I believe, the reason why Torah is multi-perspectival, why Tanakh contains so many different kinds of voices, why Mishnah and Talmud are structured around argument, and why Midrash is built on the premise that there are 70 faces to Torah. No other civilization I know has had so subtle and complex an understanding of the nature of truth, nor has there been any other so valued peace. Judaism is not and never was pacifist. National self-defense sometimes requires war. But Isaiah and Micah were the first visionaries of a world in which nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Isaiah is the poet laureate of peace. So it's a combination of all of these different feelings that we can't just totally rely on the material. We have to rely on spiritual as well. Yes, Michael.
As Jews, we believe we have the answer. But what makes us different is because we do not deny everyone else's choice.
Very true.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that Rabbi Sachs is trying to point out, that if you recognize that everyone else has a different slant on things from their perspective, that putting it all together gets you closer to the truth. Nobody has the absolute truth.
That's what makes the United States the greatest nation on this earth, is because this nation is a Christian country. And this nation permits the practice of every religion in the world in peace, regardless what it, not, I don't know, too many other countries can do that, but that's really what makes this country great.
Thank you. Any other comments? Rabbi, you're wringing your hands
I'm
there.
listening. I'm listening and absorbing and appreciating.
Because it just, I'm also a fan of Ruth Bryn, and she addresses Genesis 22:17. I will bestow my blessing upon you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the sands of the seashore. She goes on. By what shore did Abraham walk when he heard God's promise of posterity? It must have been a broad and sandy beach with stars flung like jewels across the sky. Surely to number the grains of sand would have baffled the brain of Abraham. Nor is he an astronomer who could count the stars. If when he walked by the sea that night, his mind could leap to infinity. Grant us, Lord, peace to walk beneath the stars by field or wood or restless sea. Let our minds dwell as Abraham's did, not on known and numbered things, but on you. Let our souls reach out as the soul of Abraham, rejecting zero, and with faith and vision, embracing infinity. Any comments?
And she wrote that long before Buzz Lightyear.
That's right. She has multiple comments about the different passages in Torah.
Right.
And I wanted to address what we have been speaking about. This is her commentary on Bereshit, creation. When the divine word ended chaos and nothingness, when God rolled away the darkness from the light, that was the first moment of creation. When Adam opened his eyes and held earth and heaven, that was a moment of creation as real as the first. For the sun is not bright without an eye to see. The waves of the sea cannot crash and roar without an ear to listen. And unless life marks off the segments, time is a dimension without measure. Though we are finite, God created us both free and conscious, able to share in the power of creation. Every moment that we behold anew the work of God, the jewels of dew on morning grass, the smile lighting the face of a beloved child, every moment that we work for good is a moment of creation. Lord God, renew in us, in everyone, the bright mornings of Adam and Eve. Let each dawn rise fresh with hope as it was in the beginning. Inspire us to create what is good. Quicken our delight in all that you create. So this is another commentary on somebody is thinking about the act of creation. So any other ideas about what Ruth Bryn has said? Yes, Don.
What you read, Marty, I thought, it's very poetic and full of good metaphor. But at the risk of being devil's advocate, I think it overlooks some of the bloody history of our people. And, you know, you could go back into any book of the Tanakh and find the most horrible, bloody
Mhm.
events that the Israelites inflicted on their neighbors, and sometimes on the instruction of God. I mean, I think of the Canaanites, the Midianites, all were slaughtered by the Israelites. I think of the conflict between Israel and Judah, and it wasn't until David who tried to unite the lands, but they were in utter opposition. You know, I appreciate the high regard, but I think it overlooks an awful lot that we should be aware of as part of our learning about ourselves. I mean, the fact that 2 temples were destroyed at a time when it was about a power struggle, really, both times. And, you know, to cherry pick the prophets, Jeremiah kind of skates in and out of what was really going on at that time. So, I mean, I like to see us under the glowing light too, but I also have to recognize it wasn't always that way. Again, I know that I'm being the devil's advocate there.
Ruth Bryn actually addresses that in another poem. When it is entitled Jews Confront History. And she goes into all of these different challenges that have occurred in Jewish history, and you have to learn from each challenge. Okay, but the title of her poem is Jews Confront History, and it's a very lengthy poem, and it talks about all of the trials of the patriarchs, all of the trials of Judaism through different eras in history, how they had to confront going to war with various nations, as you pointed out. But she looks at it from a slightly different perspective, as you pointed out, Don. And it talks, and I'm only going to read an excerpt, but she addresses all of the in the section entitled "The Enlightenment," she addresses all of the things that Judaism has given the world, okay, and as well. And she is talking about, we will continue our struggle with chaos, resisting its curses, taking its blessings, always preserving the deep center of Judaism. Mm-hmm. But that's another of her poems that are also fairly meaningful. I also found something written by Dr. Plout, Rabbi Plout, and in a section as a commentary on Genesis 50, and that is the measure of a man or woman. And I see Gail is looking through her book, and I'm just going to single out certain parts of this. Gail, if you have it in front of you, do you have that?
Where exactly are you?
Are you, do you have Plout, Rabbi?
Oh, no, I don't have plotted.
Oh,
No,
okay.
not my Friedman.
In the measure of a man, he says, Joseph's greatness is in a large measure due to his own awareness that he is serving a higher destiny. Egypt has been good to him. It has given him everything a man could hope for. Still, to him, it represents exile. His home is elsewhere. It is to a land not yet his that his bones will be taken. As his people wander, he will wander. As they find a home, he will find his home with them. Joseph is a man who in many ways represents the Jew to be, who remains a son of his father and of his people, who wants to return to his origins, and who even in death will not be separated from the fate of his descendants. He goes on and quotes Genesis 50, verse 19. Am I a substitute for God? He asks, and thereby shows himself the prototype of the religious man of today. He acknowledges his human limitations in the midst of affluence and power, and at the same time acknowledges the ultimate power of God. This is true greatness fashioned out of suffering and hardship. It is great will and deep devotion fashioned out of ability and humility. Comments? What do you think about what Dr. or Rabbi Plout has said? What about the his rejection of the temptation of the wonders of Egypt, and at the same time remembers his family and from where they've come? Any comments about that? I don't see any hands. So I guess it speaks for, yes, Don.
It's a sidebar comment, really. Not
Sure.
correct.
Okay.
I'm just reading history of the alignment between the Exodus and Egyptian recorded history. Could you repeat your question again, Marty? Sorry.
What do you think about his comments about Joseph? About he recognizes that Joseph had everything going for him in Egypt. You know, the marvels of Egypt, the marvels of the day. And he had lots of power granted to him by the Pharaoh. But he, in that one statement, he recognizes that he is, if I'm paraphrasing here, he's been basically guided by the precepts that he has learned from his family, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he says, am I a substitute for God? And any comments about that? Yes.
Yeah, let me get back my mind back on track here. So reading history of Egypt and comparing that to the Tanakh, and there's like 300-400 years between Joseph and the Exodus, but there's no mention in Egyptian records of the Exodus at that time, the Hebrew Exodus.
Yes, we've discussed that. Yes.
But there is an alignment if you cut out that 300 or 400 years of what's known as the Dark Ages of Egyptian history, of which there's little record. And then that puts Joseph right in the middle, or just prior to the Exodus, which to me makes much more sense in terms of Jacob and Joseph's foundation, the Israelites. Otherwise, I don't get the connection from there, from Jacob to Moses, I guess is what I'm saying. Moses is where the law originated. And obviously I'm not being coherent here, so why don't you just forget what I'm doing?
Okay.
We're trying to understand where the confusion is, so.
Yeah, yes. Is that a Wendy hand?
No,
It-
that's a David hand.
Okay. David?
No, that was for me, actually.
Yes.
When you said Joseph wondered if he was a substitute for God, he knew he wasn't, but the Egyptians may have thought that because of his dreams. But the other end of that stick says he really never felt like he belonged because he didn't want anything from Egypt. He wanted his family, so he was just always outside the bubble.
Okay.
That's what it sounds.
Yeah. But he's saying this to his brothers with their,
Brothers never showed the respect they should.
yeah. They recognize his power, his authority, and he says, no, I'm not a substitute for God. All I've done is, if you will, another paraphrase, I've been a tool of God's. I've done his will. Which leads me to another discussion. Oh, you had something else to say, Wendy?
Yeah,
Oh, I was just going to say that he was, for lack of a better analogy, a man without a country. He really never felt part of Egypt, and his brothers never respected him enough to feel part of his family. So there he was.
That's a good point. Good point.
Yeah, I mean,
Nick?
and Marty, I was even gonna say. And
Yes,
even
Ruth
though-
Ann.
Even though he was well respected and everything in Egypt, that doesn't mean the Egyptians really treated him as an equal.
Right.
He could have still been treated as an outsider.
May have been. That's right. Any other comments? Now I'm going to ask you just 3 words. When we use the word to serve or a servant, okay, we not a slave, but a servant. Okay. What do you think of when you say servant?
An angel.
Okay. What else? Yes, Joanne.
When you say to serve, it's like I have my own free will. But when you say servant, that means I don't have my own free will. Somebody else is in charge of me. I'm not talking about slave, but servant. And there's a big difference between those two words for me. I can serve, I can read the Torah, I can read my New Testament, and I can try my best to understand what's there and to serve God, but not to be a servant to God.
Very good. What about, oh, yes, go ahead, Ricky.
Yeah, I was just thinking a better turn on that word would be to do service is.
I was going to lead us into that. Go
Yeah.
ahead. You read my mind.
Yeah, well.
So go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, as you guys all know, I'm part of Al-Anon, and I've been for many years, and we stress service to the community, basically. I do service in the synagogue by the various functions that I perform. I know that the more, well, another one of my ditties, as I give to the earth, so the earth gives back to me. I get more out of organizations that I do service to than I do the ones I just give money to, if that is sort of the other side of it. But I used to think of servant as almost, servile, another sort of word off of that. But in the last few years, in my own personal life, I'm more rewarded by the service I do to another person, to an organization, to a God, to a whatever. That's where I get my meaning. What is my purpose in life is to be of service to humanity, going back to Genesis 2:2, to sort of help complete the job that God didn't finish. There's just so many sides to the word to be in service, to do service rather than to be a servant.
Right.
It's more proactive rather than taking an order from somebody else.
Very good. Or is it a two-way street?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. As I give, I get. But
Sure.
I don't do service in order to get,
Right.
but when I look back, I get so much more by doing service than I would have had I not.
Okay. Gail and then Michael
Yeah, I was just thinking about
and then Rabbi.
serving. It's almost like a willingness to not dominate, but to, and not subjugate, that's too strong a word, but to lower yourself a bit, right? And not try to dominate and run things, but to serve. So, and that sometimes that's not so easy. You think I really could do the better job than so-and-so, but I'm willing to serve in a lower capacity in order to get things done.
Okay.
So that's it can be a struggle sometimes too.
Okay. Michael?
A servant could be a partnership between two people or more. But basically, I would say between two people, and one person of this partnership may offer or be able to do a little bit more than the other partner.
Very good. Okay, Rabbi and then Chris.
And I don't know the answer, so I'm only throwing
It's
out the
open-ended,
question.
sure.
When did or why did we start referring to our gathering for prayer as a service, as worship services? God's come to services. Okay, I don't know the answer, but I'm listening to the definitions of the explanations that people have and trying to see if one or the other might lead me more towards, that's the connection.
Okay. Chris, it's a good one. Thank you. Yes.
I think service or to serve is the action that you take to help someone else.
Okay. It's an interesting, go ahead, Ricky.
Well, I was just going to pick up on what Rabbi said. If we're serving, maybe the religious service is to serve in order to help people find their path to their higher place, you know, I mean, however you want to put it. It's the same way we use the word service in the program. It's not, we don't have a religious service, but all of our service is toward this bigger goal of helping other people get to the same place or get to a place that is meaningful. I'll put it that way. Leave it open.
Then Gail, then Michael.
I was just thinking more service, a servant or what, I mean, you're two people, not necessarily equal people, but two people who are independent. I mean, the servant is there out of choice, whether it's, you know, the maid, the butler, the nurse, CNA. I mean, all these people that we call the service industries. They're there by choice. If they want to quit, they can quit, you know, anytime. Whereas a slave can't quit. They might be doing the same functions, but the slave, and I think maybe that's the same thing with the service that we're talking about, services, religious services. We are there by choice. We can quit at any time. We don't have, nobody is forcing us to go. We might not be equals to God or whatever, but we're there by choice. You know, nobody has to be there. Nobody has to turn on their computer.
Very good. Now, Gail.
Yes, I'd like to widen the scope a bit here. You can serve in many ways and not just people.
Right.
Now, because I'm into animals and the environment and all that, there's many ways to serve, and that's something that's done quietly and anonymously a lot of the time. There's no headlines about that. And, so I just like to widen that.
It's very good. Very good. Yes, Michael.
I would be, I remember one of the police slogans is to protect and to serve.
Okay. The military does that too. And so do our ministers and priests and rabbis. They're in the service of God. So yes, Don.
I was going to go with what Chris said. I thought that was very concise,
Yes.
but because we're in a service economy now. You know, manufacturing has gone from, used to be 25% of the economy down to about 8%. And so we monetize everything we do for other people now. It's part of the economy. So along with what Gail was saying, now we have to switch to volunteerism to distinguish it from service, which you get paid for.
Okay. So what are all these people? Let's take it away from the more material. Okay. And when we say we're going to serve God, what are we saying?
I'm chuckling. We're going to finish the job he didn't finish. We're going to work on the job he didn't finish.
It's to serve humanity, I think.
Serve humanity. You can say serve God, serve humanity. It really,
It's not up to you.
okay. What do we mean by a serve in tennis?
Get it going.
Service.
Yeah, you start it.
So what happens? Giving. Serving, you know, in a military service, you're putting your life on the line. You're willing to give up your life.
Right.
Okay, you're setting an example in a way. The policeman does it, the fireman does it, the ministers and rabbis do it.
The silver service that you.
When you do,
at the
that's right.
table.
And you can also say when you do a good job so that others may benefit, you have done them a good service. You've given to them something that which is good. At the same time, we can say, oh, I received the service and I'm going to hit the ball back over the net. Okay. And you can then use the example of all of those who have served us in some way and give them the same recognition that they would hope you would give them,
Exactly.
and pass on to others.
That's right. Reciprocate.
So I tend to look at the word serve a little strangely, maybe. Yes, yes,
Real
Richie.
fast, I just have the image of the bailiff coming up to a guy, you've been served. You know?
He's giving out. So God,
It's,
you know,
it's not always
servant
positive.
of
It's not always
God,
positive.
a servant of God. God has given, and now the messenger is the servant of God. Or
Right.
the fireman, it's been given the instructions how to
bailiff
fight a
is
fire.
serving you papers for whatever crime you committed.
So yes, I think that's it's an important concept in our religion. What about respect?
Um,
What about the word respect?
Being mindful of others.
Okay, be mindful. We are supposed to, commanded to respect our elders, to honor our elders, right? And respecting others, right? Does that mean we have to accept everything that they do?
Not necessarily.
Give me an example.
One person may believe in one thing and you may not, but because you don't believe the way another person, you still respect them. You just disagree does not mean to disrespect.
right.
Very good. Very good. Can you cite a specific example? Okay, Gail, yes.
Oh,
Go ahead, Gail.
I was just gonna say, where do you draw the line though?
Yeah.
That's the dilemma. Where do you draw the line? And I'm not just talking about politics, but whatever.
It's in anything.
When
That's right.
things are just wrong, for any reason, you have to draw the line. Now, I'm sorry, but that isn't necessarily being respectful. Sometimes you can't be respectful. You have to say no.
When we talk about respecting life, any comments about that?
Well, you know my feelings about that, so. Yeah.
In respecting life in what context, Marty?
Any context. I'm leaving it wide open for your own definition.
That's why I'm vegetarian. It's
Okay.
wrong.
Okay. So this also dovetails into the book of Genesis, these words, and there are other words you can come up with too. But what about honor?
What about it?
What about,
In
well,
He-
can
in-
you cite
in Hebrew,
anything?
incidentally, in traditional Judaism, it's the same word.
Yeah. But we tend to use it a little differently in English. We use different, but they overlap tremendously.
Yeah, well, honor and respect would go hand in hand. When you say honor your mother and father, you're respecting them.
Yes.
You see, that's a matter of, so those two words are very closely connected, as I could see.
Okay. But yes, but I think there are examples in the book of Genesis.
Oh,
Okay, go ahead. Yes, yes, please.
I am thinking that what you're referring in regard to honor your mother and your father, respect your mother and your father. I think that's exactly the same word that is for anybody else's, whether we agree politically or not, whether we have to give them that space. It's honorable to give them that space. It's not, they're not in this world to please you individually, but they are in this world for their own mission and their own connection with God, I assume, if they have one, and if they don't, then that's still their job to find their God. If it's not ours, it's got to be somebody. But I think the word honor includes and covers everybody and everything from the largest to the smallest. Whether we agree with what they have done or not, we are not their judge, correct?
Correct. Very good points. Very good points, everyone. I think that Joseph, Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham would all be grateful for your understanding what they had to do to get through this entire book.
Mm-hmm.
You've done justice to it. Yes, Rabbi.
Mariam, I'm wondering if the part of the underlying meaning of honor or respect is in, I guess, like affirming the authenticity of the person who we're speaking to, or or the symbol that we're speaking of. It's acknowledging that by definition, I mean, there can, again, not to get into politics or whatever, but there can be someone who may have a particular title. You can respect the title, but not necessarily respect the person who holds the title. So by respecting and honoring, you're affirming the authenticity of that which you deem, higher up, but you can still question whether right. Okay. So, I mean, we get the question, we used to get the question all the time, like in Sunday school, is, does honor my mother and father, does that mean I have to obey them? Does it mean that I have to, and we would usually say, no, it means that you have to listen to them and then make your own life decision, but give validity to what it is that they're saying or what it is that they're doing when you make your decision.
Good, very good point. Very good
I like
point.
that, Rabbi. Yeah.
Yes, Ricky.
I'm not sure how this is going to come out, but in the use of the words, but those two words, honor and respect. But I remember one point I was dating somebody that was not good for me. And I remember my saying to myself, I honor me enough to break up the relationship. Now, I always respected me, but here was a point where I gave myself even more value by honoring myself enough to break up an unhealthy relationship, or, whatever it is. But, but that was the particular instance, the first time I used that word I honor me, because I think that's also very important in our own growth cycle, whatever you want to call it.
Very good. Very good. So when we talk about our services, maybe it's both sides are giving. We give to God, and God is giving to us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it was very obvious, again, using the Hebrew,
Yes.
that when you talk about that the service, if you will, or the worship
Mhm.
was sacrifices. It was,
Yes.
it was giving something, giving up something, sacrificing something on your own. Yes, to praise God, or yes, to thank God, or yes, to petition God. But there certainly was, it wasn't just
Physical.
implicit, it was explicit that that the worshiper or the server, if you will, the one who's bringing service, was going to benefit somehow. So like other people were saying, there is a partnership here.
Yes.
It's part of the covenant, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that, I think we're going to end today. And next week, we will attempt to start our next book, Exodus. So we will take a leap of faith of 400 years. Yes.
Marty,
Yes. Okay. Yes.
I'd like to start a pool. Everyone chip in a nickel or something, and whether or not we actually move on to Exodus next week.
Okay.
I have my doubts.
Because somebody may, sometimes people still want to talk about something that was mentioned, and that'll be fine. Yes, Rabbi.
I need to offer or a little explanation and a thank you. If I'm able to join next week, I will be late, but with great additional help. Most of you are not aware of this, that Ruth Ann was able to give to me and to the North American Association of Retired Reform Rabbis. We've put together a special Saturday morning service for next Saturday, which is Chol HaMoed Sukkot, which is the Shabbat during Sukkot. So it's a special service for worship service for the holiday, only for the retired rabbis and their spouses. And Ruth Ann was able to help me record much of the music for the service. And then the techies, actually, I think they're in Denver. So how during the high holidays, we had some of these videos where there were, one person would start singing and then another person would sing, or somebody else would come in with the cello or with the flute or whatever. That's what's going to happen. So I'm very excited about seeing how this will work, because I'm singer number one.
Yeah, I'd love to see it too.
I set the tone, I set the key, I set the rhythm and the pace of the song, and then different rabbis and cantors and whatever who will be adding on to me. So I'm very excited about to see how it's going to look. It should be finished before 11 o'clock our time, because the coordinator of this whole organization, who happens to be an old friend of mine, living now, he's retired, he and his wife live in Denver, but it's their grandchild's, I think it's a bat mitzvah on Zoom. So they have to be finished with this service so that they can get into the other. It's all a mixture. So we're smiling through it, God willing. So I just don't know if I'll be able to.
You gotta let me know if we can
Saturday.
see the results. I'd love to see the results.
I'll give you a report.
Oh, good. That's what we want to know.
And just don't anybody expect me to ever have those expertise.
Well, according to the coordinators, you did just fine.
Oh, well, that's
Norm, I think you've got the easy part. Can you imagine being the fifth one and trying to be in exact rhythm with the other four?
Oh, I know.
You get to set the rhythm.
They sent it back to me twice saying, no, we need you to do it in a higher key. We need you to do it with a little more upbeat. And so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
Are we going to be able to listen to you, at least the part you did?
I don't think so.
Will we be able to do it? No.
I don't think so.
Yes.
We hear you every Shabbat.
Except at our services, obviously.
Well,
right.
no, No, Rabbi, no, I mean, I have your part recorded. So
Oh,
anybody,
right.
Well,
we can
yeah,
listen,
but-
we can listen to what I
that's the-
recorded. We just can't
You
listen
just
to
can't,
the
can't see
final.
what the overlays will
Yeah,
look
and
like.
that's what
Right.
I'd love to
Oh,
hear.
that would
Your,
be lovely.
your part is out
that's
there.
Like I said, I'll give you I'll give you a report.
Okay.
Good.
It's totally unedited because that's the part that I told Les that he didn't have to edit and put out on the website. But yeah, we have it.
Well,
It's saved
don't share,
by us for
don't
posterity.
share them all necessarily. So.
Are they gonna,
Oh,
are they gonna YouTube it so sometime in the future, some other rabbi will say, here's an example of,
I don't know. I don't know.
okay. That would be a good way to do it. Ruth Ann, did you want to make any other announcements for services this week?
Well, we have Erev Sukkot services on Monday, 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. We wanted to have a potluck. Well, thank COVID for that. No potluck, but we will have some nibbles afterwards. We would hope that the sisterhood was going to decorate our sukkah. That kind of fell through too. Thank COVID. Next year in Jerusalem without COVID is what I'd like to say as far as
Yeah.
the ending the high holidays, and then hopefully, we will start Exodus. I'm gonna send out my email stating that because I think there's a few people who might start back in if we can keep track of where we are. Although I don't know. I mean, Marty, you prepare tremendously, but you prepare in ways other than just what's going on in the Torah, because how can you prepare for when we only read 3 sentences? It's like, but
Well,
you do
there's
you
one
do a
thing.
phenomenal job.
There's one thing, and I have to say that I take the cue from the rabbi when the way he does things, and I try to emulate a lot of his approach to things, and I do not have the background that he does have, but but you have to have your approach based on some, it's not unique. I'm copying the way he does it. Okay. And that's
so remember that the next time somebody wants to have a conversation with me about digestive tracts.
No, but you like to learn from people what seems to work, and you put it all together and somehow come up with your own style. But I have to say that if we read Torah and we dissect it, we have to then turn around and synthesize. We can dissect, analyze, but using the scientific method, we then have to synthesize something new based on what we've done. And it's taken us 3 years to get to this point. And I've enjoyed every minute of it only because of y'all.